إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. This week inshallah we'll begin talking about the opinion that leaving the Salat out of laziness isn't an act of disbelief. So last week we finished, or 2 weeks ago we finished the opinion or the evidences for the opinion that it is an act of disbelief. So this week inshallah we'll begin with that. So the second opinion, and again we're talking about out of negligence or laziness, so it isn't out of rejecting it, and it doesn't relate to being proud or to having too much pride to pray or anything like that. It's strictly out of laziness or being negligent. So this is the opinion. It's attributed to Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik and Shafi'i. And some of the Hanabila took this opinion as well. Imam Ibn Qudamah mentioned that the scholar Ibn Battah, who was from the major scholars of the Hanbalis, he mentioned that this was his opinion, and the Imam al-Nawawi said that it's the opinion of the majority of the scholars. So this is the second opinion. So we'll go straight into the evidences that they use. So the first evidence that they use is the verse when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَن يَشَاءُ, or that indeed Allah forgives not shirk, or that partners are set up with Him, but He forgives everything that is less than that to whoever He wills. And that's from Surah An-Nisa, verse 48. So they use this evidence and they say, or the way they use it is they say that the only thing that isn't forgiven, or the only thing that would remove someone from Islam, is an open act of shirk, or setting up a partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it's by making dua to other than Him, or slaughtering for other than Him, or performing tawaf for other than Him, or anything like that. But that any other acts individually wouldn't be kufr, let alone leaving acts. So that the acts that it would need to be an act of shirk in order for someone to leave Islam by doing this. So this is the first evidence that they use. This is the main evidence that they use from the Qur'an. So the next evidences are related to the Sunnah, or come from the Sunnah. So one of the main evidences that they use from the Sunnah is a hadith of Ubadah ibn as-Samit عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال: 5 صلوات افترضهن الله على عباده من أحسن وضوءهن وصلاهن لوقتهن فأتم ركوعهن وسجودهن وخشوعهن كان له عند الله عهد أن يغفر له، ومن لم يفعل فليس له عند الله عهد إن شاء غفر له وإن شاء عذبه. Or that Ubadah ibn as-Samit radiallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, there are 5 salawat that Allah has obligated upon His slaves. So whoever perfects their wudu, prays them at their time, in that, and he completes or perfects their ruku' and their sujood and their khushu', he has a covenant or a promise with Allah that He will forgive him. And whoever does not do so, he does not have a covenant with Allah. If He wills, He will forgive him, and if He wills, He will punish him. And this hadith is narrated by Imam Ahmad and Malik and Abu Dawood and Al-Bayhaqi and Ibn Hibban and Al-Marwazi and others. And this hadith was declared sahih by An-Nawawi and Ibn Kathir and Al-Mannawi, As-Sakhawi, As-Suyuti, and others. So this is an authentic hadith. The way they use this is they say that here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that there's 5 salawat that Allah has obligated, and that whoever performs them and does all of these things, then he will have a commitment or a promise from Allah that He will forgive him, and that whoever doesn't do these things, then he doesn't have a promise, and that he's underneath the will of Allah if He forgives him then He will, and if He decides to or chooses to punish him and then enter him into Jannah, then He would. So this is the way that they use this. So far, we talked about the evidences for the first opinion. So far with these two evidences, do you see any problems with the way that they're used as far as proving that it's disbelief, or that it wouldn't be disbelief? Sorry.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
The first evidence where you mentioned Surah An-Nisa 48, Allah has mentioned shirk is kufr, but any other act or leaving it is not kufr. Is that what you said?
That's the way they use it. So they say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that He won't forgive shirk, but that everything less than that He will forgive to whoever He wishes or wills. So they say that salat is less than that, or it isn't shirk. Leaving the salat isn't shirk, so it would fall under the rest of those things.
It's kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of weak.
Yeah.
But
in what way?
Because isn't there other hadith that say that leaving the salat is shirk, and that's the difference between the Muslimin and the kuffar?
Right. So there is evidence that proves that it is shirk. Leaving it would be shirk. But also, what if someone said that rejecting the Qur'an wouldn't take you out of Islam, and use this ayah? What would we say to that? Would say yes. So what's meant in this verse isn't just shirk. It's any act of major kufr, whether it's a statement or a belief or an action. So if someone threw the Qur'an in the toilet, would we say that because it's not shirk, it wouldn't be disbelief, and that the evidence for this is this ayah? Obviously, it would be rejected. This use of evidence would be rejected, because we know that there's other evidences that prove that, or that would indicate that what's meant by this verse is any major kufr, including major shirk, would be something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't forgive. Like if someone swore at Allah, or swore at the Prophet ﷺ, or killed a prophet. Individually, each of these things aren't necessarily shirk in the sense that you've put a partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're without doubt acts of disbelief. Or if someone said, rejected the Prophet ﷺ, or rejected some of the prophets that are in the Qur'an, or any of these things, all of these would be something that takes you out of Islam. So once you say that those things are an exception to the verse, then it no longer can be used to say that anything that isn't shirk would be forgiven. So once you disprove that this verse is absolute, then you can't use it anymore, in the sense that, so all this would prove is that anything that isn't major shirk doesn't take someone out of Islam, or anything that isn't major kufr wouldn't be something that would remove someone from Islam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could forgive it, or may forgive it. So it's an evidence against the Khawarij, in the sense that not every sin is something that takes someone out of Islam, but as far as using it for every dispute and saying, well, it's not shirk, so it's not kufr, that's where that use of evidence falls apart.
Akhi, shirk is one type of kufr.
Right.
It's the worst kind of kufr. But it doesn't mean that all kufrs are shirk, right?
No, I mean, there's some scholars who have argued that every kufr is shirk and every shirk is kufr, like in the sense that they're interchangeable. But I mean, that's a different topic. But really, in the end, it comes down to, once you say that, swearing at Allah wouldn't be forgiven, then the use of that verse falls apart, because you've already made an exception. So it obviously isn't that it's absolute the way it is. So that's kind of the first problem with that use. But then, like Khalid mentioned, that there is evidence that leaving the salat would be shirk. So, I mean, it would fall under that verse.
And we're talking about leaving the salah out of laziness is not disbelief.
Yeah.
And the Imams have said this. And the second evidence is the Hadith.
Is the Hadith, yeah.
Akhi, I'm trying to understand. The first part of the Hadith says that whoever performs them and then perfects it.
Yeah.
So somebody leaving it out of laziness is not performing it.
Right, and they're not perfecting it. So, and you've hit it exactly. The correct way of using this is that if someone is negligent in their salat, they don't perform it correctly, then they could be sinful in doing that. If they do their ruku' very lazily, they do their sujood lazily, they don't really pay attention to their wudu, they're not paying attention during the salat, they have no khushu', this would be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might punish them for being negligent with the way they're performing their salat. If they perform it perfectly, then they have a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He'll forgive them. But again, like you said, if they don't pray it at all, it doesn't fall under this hadith. According to the Prophet ﷺ didn't say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obligated 5 salat. Whoever prays them has a covenant that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive them, and whoever doesn't pray them won't. Then he's under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy or choice to forgive them. He didn't say that it's either praying or not praying. It's either perfecting all of these things or not perfecting all of them. So they're really, like you said, it's not on the same topic, but it is used by some as evidence.
And you said that one, that verse that says that the only thing that's not forgiven is shirk, that's talking about like dying upon that, right? Because obviously if someone's mushrik, then they become Muslims.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the second evidence that they use. The third evidence that they use is a hadith from Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman, أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يدرس الإسلام كما يدرس وشيء الثوب حتى لا يدري أو لا يدرى ما صيام ولا صلاة ولا نسك ولا صدقة ولا يسرى على كتاب الله عز وجل في ليلة فلا يبقى في الأرض منه آية وتبقى طوائف من الناس الشيخ الكبير والعجوز يقولون أدركنا آباءنا على هذه الكلمة لا إله إلا الله فنحن نقولها. Or that Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, Islam will be erased as the decorations or the adornments on a piece of clothing are erased. So meaning any sort of designs that are on a clothing, Islam will be erased the same way these things will be erased. So slowly and slowly until, and then the Prophet ﷺ said, until nothing is known, or the salat and or the fasting and the salat and the hajj and the sadaqah aren't known or nobody knows about them, and the book of Allah Azza wa Jal will be taken in one night, so nothing will remain, or not even one verse from it will remain on earth. And then the Prophet ﷺ continued and said, and some people will remain, such as old men, and they will say, we met our fathers and they were saying this word La ilaha illallah, so we say it. So then Sila, who was from the companions of Hudhayfa radiallahu anhu, said, and what will La ilaha illallah help them when they don't know anything about salat or siyam or hajj or the nusuk, so meaning the rituals of hajj and umrah, nor any sadaqah. So he's asking him, what will this benefit them when they don't know anything about this? Or ما تغني عنهم لا إله إلا الله وهم لا يدرون ما صلاة ولا صيام ولا نسك ولا صدقة. So Hudhayfa radiallahu anhu turned away from him, and then he repeated this to him 3 times. So he asked him 3 times, and each time Hudhayfa radiallahu anhu would turn away from him. Or فأعرض عنه حذيفة ثم ردها عليه ثلاثا كل ذلك يعرض عنه حذيفة. Or that so then he said, ثم أقبل عليه في الثالثة فقال يا صلة تنجيهم من النار ثلاثا. Or that then Hudhayfa turned to him on the 3rd time and said, it will save them from the fire. And he said that 3 times. So they use this hadith, and this hadith is narrated by Ibn Majah and Al-Hakim and Al-Bazzar and others, and it was declared Sahih by Al-Busiri in his commentary or his checking or verification of Sunan Ibn Majah, and Al-Hakim in Al-Mustadrak, and Ibn Hajar said that its chain is qawi or strong. So this is an acceptable hadith again. So they use this and they say that these people won't be praying, and they won't be fasting, and they won't be performing hajj or umrah, and they won't be giving sadaqah. All they'll be saying is La ilaha illallah. And then Hudhayfa said that it will save them from the fire. So they say, obviously, if someone doesn't pray, then they still fall under the people who say La ilaha illallah. So that word would save them from the fire. So what about this evidence? Do you guys see that as strong or
no? And I see it's weak. Well, because it's specifically talking about when that Islam is just erased. So if Islam's very widespread, almost the biggest religion in the world, so that can't be applied to today because we know about the Salah, we know about Zakah, we know about everything. So that's not even applicable to us.
Right.
As the nation at the current times, until the Deen is completely erased. Right.
Right, so it would be evidence, say someone entered Islam and never heard of the Salat. Then we would say, well, they're similar to them in that, well, they never heard of it, right? No, yeah. Or if they were in a place where, the ignorance was, people just forgot about this, they didn't know anything about it, or those types of things, then they would fall under this, and as long as they were still saying La ilaha illallah and not committing any other, nullifications of Islam, then this would be evidence for that. But obviously here, they're even, the Hadith says that even the book of Allah will be taken off the earth. Like no verse will be left from it. So we can't compare that situation to someone who knows about the Salat, knows how to pray, or has people to teach them how to pray and those types of things, and just decides not to. Like they're two separate situations. So yeah.
Ask a supplementary question. Yeah. Akhi, during the time between two prophets, at any point of time, when the authentic verses are lost and the deen is lost, and people are left with La ilaha illallah, and they die on it, do they also fall under this hadith? Is it possible?
Yeah, Allahu Alam, like if they still remain on what they have from Islam, then yeah, like we have the hadith about Waraq bin Nawfal, and then the Prophet ﷺ said that he saw that he has two gardens in Jannah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, to not insult him, and things like that. And we know that there were other people in the time of the Prophet ﷺ before he was sent, who would call to the Millah of Ibrahim, and they wouldn't eat the food of the mushrikeen.
Sa'id bin Zaid.
Yeah, and so like we know that, and we have evidences that they would enter Jannah, or that they would still be upon Islam because they stuck to what they had. And obviously they weren't performing everything from the Millah of Ibrahim because it was, thousands of years, between them. But what they had, they were acting upon, and they didn't have nullifications of it. As opposed to someone who knows what's going, or has the evidence for it and knows about it, but chooses not to. They're kind of two separate situations. Yeah. Then they also mention another hadith. It's a weak hadith. It's from Abu Dharr that he said, that the Prophet ﷺ said, دعوت لأمتي قال فماذا أجبت أو ماذا رد عليك قال أجبت بالذي لو اطلع عليه كثير منهم طلعة تركوا الصلاة. Or that the Prophet ﷺ was narrating something that happened, and he said, I made a dua for my ummah. And so Abu Dharr said, what were you answered, or what was the answer that you were given? And the Prophet ﷺ said, I was given an answer that if many of the people knew about it, they would have left the Salat. So the way they use this and say that the Prophet ﷺ here mentioned that the people, if they saw the forgiveness and they saw the type of answer that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the Prophet ﷺ for his dua for his ummah, they would have left the Salat. So first of all, this hadith, it's not authentic. It was it was declared munkar by Al-Albani, so it's not usable to begin with. Secondly, even if it was authentic, it doesn't clearly indicate that the salat isn't, or leaving the salat wouldn't be kufr. The point of it was that it shows the great forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, but again, the fact that it's weak really doesn't need any more discussion after that, and we don't really need an explanation, because even if we had a hadith that was clear that said leaving the salat isn't kufr, if it was weak, then we don't need to then explain, well, how would it fit into the other evidences, because it's not an evidence, it's not from the Sharia, so we don't really need to go into that. And that hadith was narrated by An-Nasa'i, or was narrated by Ahmad, and then some parts of it were narrated by Imam An-Nasa'i and Ibn Majah. The next hadith that they use is a hadith from Aisha radiallahu anha, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, الدواوين عند الله عز وجل ثلاثة ديوان لا يعبأ الله به شيئا وديوان لا يترك الله منه شيئا وديوان لا يغفره الله فأما الديوان الذي لا يغفره الله فالشرك بالله or that the Prophet ﷺ, it's attributed to him that he said, the dawaween, or the collections, or the records are three. One is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not leave anything from it, and one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive, and one is that something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't forgive. And then he said, as for the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't forgive, then it is the shirk. And then he said, قال الله عز وجل إنه من يشرك بالله فقد حرم الله عليه الجنة, or that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, indeed whoever performs shirk with Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbid the Jannah for him. And then he said, وَأَمَّا الدِّيوَانُ الَّذِي لَا يَعْبَأُ اللَّهُ بِهِ شَيْءًا فَظُلْمُ الْعَبْدِ نَفْسُهُ فيما بينه وبين ربه من صوم يوم تركه أو صلاة تركها فإن الله عز وجل يغفر ذلك ويتجاوز إن شاء الله إن شاء. Or that the Prophet ﷺ then continued and says, as for the collection or the records which Allah won't keep, or won't won't hold against someone forever, essentially, then it is that which, or it's that which the slave has done wrong to himself, between him and between his Lord, such as a day of fasting that he left, or a salat that he left. Indeed, Allah will forgive that and overlook it if He wills, or if He wishes. And then he said, وَأَمَّا الدِّيوَانُ الَّذِي لَا يَتْرُكُ اللَّهُ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا فَظُلْمُ الْعِبَادِ بَعْضُهُمْ بَعْضًا الْقِصَاصُ لَا مَحَالَةً. Or that then the Prophet ﷺ continued and said, as for the records which Allah won't leave, or won't leave anything from it, meaning He won't leave it alone, is the oppression of one slave to another. And then he said, it's the qisas, or it is the recompense in kind, without any doubt, or there's no escape from it. So here, the point of this is that they're saying that the Prophet ﷺ divided things into three categories. One is something that would take someone out of Islam and would keep someone in Jahannam forever. The second is actions which the person harms or does wrong to another slave, and that would be something that they would have their rights taken back on the day of resurrection. And the third is something that's a sin toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that hasn't removed someone out of Islam, and that those would be things that are forgiven. And in this hadith, they state that, in this hadith or in this narration, it mentions a salat that the person left. And this hadith is narrated by Ahmad and Al-Hakim, and he declared it sahih, as did Ahmad Shakir, and as-Suyuti declared it to be hasan. But in reality, it's a weak hadith. Ibn Daqiq al-Eid spoke about this, and he said that it contains a narrator named Sadaqah ibn Musa. And he said that major narrators have narrated from this person, Sadaqah, but Abu Hatim mentioned that he isn't strong, but his hadith are to be written. So, as we talked about in the hadith lessons, when they say that his ahadith are to be written, what it means is that we don't take his ahadith in and of themselves, but that they're strong enough that they can be used as strengthening factors. So we would write them down, and later on, if we found other evidence, then it might strengthen it. So meaning that this person is weak. Plus, also there's other narrations that are authentic in and of themselves of this hadith, that don't mention anything about the salat or the fasting. So they just mention that there's three types of records, and the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive, it just states that it's the sins that the person performs between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it doesn't specify anything about the salat or anything about the fasting. So here we would say that there's two defects to this hadith. The first is that it contains Sadaqah ibn Musa, and the second is that it contradicts the other authentic narrations that don't mention anything about the salat or the fasting. So this hadith would also be rejected as far as being used for this topic. Any questions so far? No? How long have we been going for? 25 minutes. The next hadith that they mention is one from Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن أول ما يحاسب به العبد يوم القيامة من عمله صلاته فإن صلحت فقد أفلح وأنجح وإن فسدت فقد خاب وخسر فإن انتقص من فريضته شيء قال الرب عز وجل انظروا هل لعبدي من تطوع فيكمل بها من تقص من الفريضة ثم يكون سائر عمله على ذلك. Or that Abu Hurairah narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, the first thing that the slave will be judged upon on the day of resurrection is his salat. So if it is correct, or if it is valid, or it's being done correctly, then he is successful and prosperous. And if it is rotten, meaning he hasn't done it correctly, or it hasn't been done, it isn't well, it isn't done well, then he is unsuccessful and he loses. And if he fell short at all with any obligatory prayer, the Lord Azza wa Jal says, see if my slave has any voluntary prayers with which the obligatory prayers that he fell short in may be completed. Then the rest of his actions will be based upon that. And this is narrated by Imam Ahmad and An-Nasa'i in As-Sughra and Ibn Majah and Al-Baghawi and At-Tirmidhi. And this is his phrasing. Imam An-Nawawi said that it's sahih in meaning. So he didn't authenticate the hadith itself, but he said that the meaning of the hadith is authentic. And some other scholars as well authenticated it. But Imam At-Tirmidhi, he said that it's Hasan Gharib. So, as we talked about before in some of the lessons, when Imam At-Tirmidhi says Hasan Gharib, this is him weakening the hadith. So, unlike the widespread understanding of Hasan, At-Tirmidhi, when he said Hasan Gharib, he meant that it has some weakness in it, and it's only been narrated from one chain. So, meaning that there's nothing to strengthen it and remove that weakness that's in it. And Al-Mubarakfuri, who was from the scholars who explained or commented on Jami' al-Tirmidhi, he said that it contains a narrator named Hurayth ibn Qabisa, and Al-Bukhari said that this person, Hurayth, his ahadith are questionable, and An-Nasa'i declared that his ahadith aren't authentic. So here we have At-Tirmidhi weakening the hadith, and then we have Al-Bukhari declaring one of the narrators, as well as An-Nasa'i declaring him to be a weak narrator. So this hadith wouldn't be authentic in and of itself. And then also there's other narrations of this hadith that aren't as weak, and they don't go into details specifically about what will happen. It just states that أول ما يحاسب به العبد الصلاة وأول ما يقضى بين الناس في الدماء, or that the first thing that the person will be held accountable for is the salat, and the first thing that will be judged amongst the people is things related to blood, so meaning murders and injuries and stuff like that. So this hadith again wouldn't be authentic. It's not usable for this topic. But even if it was, then it's similar to the first hadith that we talked about when the Prophet ﷺ said there's 5 salat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obligated. And then he describes specific things. So here it's not clear that the Prophet ﷺ said that he was or that he didn't pray them. It's more that he didn't do them correctly. So is there any salat or recommended or voluntary salat that can be added to kind of make up for the things that were lacking in that salat? So again, on top of it being weak, there is another way of explaining this that's more in tune with the zahir or the outside appearance of this hadith. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So this is not right that when, may Allah forgive us, our prayer is weak during the Day of Judgment, it will be supplemented by the other voluntary prayers.
Well, it could be, but it's just based on this hadith. If there's other evidences, that's a separate thing.
There are no straightforward evidence or narration that says this.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of. But even if there is, as far as this topic, it wouldn't be applicable, because if someone doesn't pray, then the obligation, then a sunnah salat wouldn't make up for that. They're two separate. Yeah.
But I was actually going to the original point, that we were taught that this is something that will happen.
Well, it could, in the sense that we know that sins will be, or that good deeds will cancel out sins. So maybe it might not be specific as far as this goes specifically to that. But if there was something that was lacking, that the person would be deserving of punishment for, we know that good deeds would cancel out that thing. So even if it wasn't specific for it, we know that generally that rule is correct, though.
The meaning is sahih, as Nawawi said.
Right, so we know that things can cancel out other things, like good deeds can cancel out bad deeds.
This is also a Hadith Qudsi if it was authentic, right?
Yeah.
That's where I found it.
Yeah.
I think it's in one of the Hadith Qudsi books.
Okay.
Jazakallah khair.
The next hadith, or another hadith that they use, is from Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu, that he said, قال لي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أبا ذر إنه سيكون بعدي أمراء يميتون الصلاة فصل الصلاة لوقتها فإن صليت لوقتها كانت لك نافلة وإلا كنت قد أحرزت صلاتك. Or that Abu Dharr narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said to him, O Abu Dharr, you would find soon after me rulers who would make their prayers dead, or they'll kill their salat, or kill the salat. You should pray at its prescribed time. If you perform your salat at its prescribed time, then it would be voluntary for you. Otherwise, you would have saved your salat. And that's narrated by Imam Muslim and the Tirmidhi and others. So the point, or the way they use this hadith, is what they're saying is that these amirs will pray the salat outside of its time. So if you realize that, or that this is happening, then you pray it in its correct time, and then pray with them later on, and then it would be, you would have, if they pray in the correct time, then you would have, you'd have a voluntary prayer to your credit. If they don't pray in the correct time, then you would have saved your salat. So they argue that here the amirs are taking the salat outside of its time, and that this would be evidence that not praying it wouldn't be an act of kufr. And another way, another way that this is explained is that some say that it's related to the recommended time. So meaning that we know that every salat has a time that it's recommended to pray within, and a time that it can't be prayed past. So for example, Fajr should be prayed close to the beginning of the time, but if someone prayed right before the sun rose, technically their salat would be accepted, but they would have been, they would have left what is the best time. And Dhuhr, again, it's better to do it in the beginning, unless, for example, some hadith mention that if it's too hot, then to wait closer to the end, or to wait into the time. And Asr, beginning of the time, Maghrib, beginning of the time, and then Isha is before the middle of the night, is the recommended times. If the ones who state that it's an act, or that leaving the salat is disbelief, they say that this is what this is referring to. So meaning that if you prayed in the correct time, then you would have, you would have saved your salat, in the sense that you got the full reward for it, and weren't being negligent with the timing. Also, another way of looking at it is that they're not praying the salat time intentionally out of it. They're just negligent in paying attention to the time, so they'll show up late and then pray it at that time. But as far as someone making the conscious decision to pray out of the time, that this hadith wouldn't apply to it. So that's the way that the other side understands this hadith. Then they mention another hadith as well. It's narrated by Imam al-Tahawi in Mushkil al-Athar, that from Abdullah bin Mas'ud عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال أمر بعبد من عباد الله أن يضرب بقبره 100 جلدة, or that Ibn Mas'ud narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, it was commanded that a slave from the slaves of Allah be struck in his grave with 100 lashes. فلم يزل يسأل ويدعو حتى صارت جلدة واحدة فجلد جلدة واحدة فامتلأ قبره عليه نارا, or that this slave did not cease asking and supplicating until it was brought down to 1 lash. Then he was lashed 1 lash and his grave was filled up with fire upon him. فلما ارتفع عنه أفاق قال على ما جلدتموني إنك, so that, or that when he woke up or came to from this lash and this fire, he said, why did you lash me? So it was said to him, إنك صليت صلاة واحدة بغير طهور, or that you prayed one prayer without purification. ومررت على مظلوم فلم تنصره, or that, and you walked by or passed by someone who was being oppressed and you did not support him. And this hadith, the only person I found speaking about it was Al-Albani, and he said that it's jayyid. And Allahu Alam, it appears that there's something not right with the text of this hadith, and that's for a number of reasons. So first of all, if the person prayed the salat without tahara and he was forgetful, then it wouldn't be a sin to begin with. And if he did so intentionally, then as we talked about in the beginning of the chapters of wudu, then according this would be or would fall under essentially that the person was mocking the religion or taking the religion lightly, and that this wouldn't be merely a sin. It would be according to many it would be an act of kufr. Like if someone intentionally just prays the salat without wudu, with no knowing that they're not on wudu and prays it, then this is even according to those who say that it's according to the ahnaf who say that it's not kufr, they say that this would be kufr because you're playing with the religion now as opposed to just being negligent. So it appears that there's something off with this text. Also, the fact that it's only narrated by At-Tahawi and Mushkil al-Athar, this would be indicative that there's something wrong with the text, or with the chain at least, because no one else had narrated all of the main collections of ahadith of the ummah. And we talked about this before, that when you see the imams of hadith, all of them steering clear of a hadith, and then it's narrated in a more obscure book, then this is at the very least indicates that there's something wrong with it, and that it wouldn't be acceptable in and of itself. So the fact that it's only narrated by At-Tahawi is cause for concern.
Okay, so the problem is with the matan, because Al-Albani said it's jayyid.
He said it's jayyid, yeah, but I mean, like, either the person prayed without tahara intentionally or unintentionally. There's no other situation. If it was unintentionally, then it's not a sin. Why would they be punished for it? And if it's intentionally, then it falls in a different category of not praying, because now you're praying without tahara, like you're just getting up, and it's not the same. So Allahu Alam, that plus the fact that it's only narrated by one, it leaves you uncomfortable in accepting it, and that there's something. Why did no one else narrate this hadith?
Yeah, even if the sanad is good, the matan does not conform the existing principles, as you mentioned. Right.
So it's indicative that there's something wrong.
Yeah, it's not usable.
Yeah. So they use this hadith, and then maybe we'll stop there for now, and then finish it next week, because we probably won't get through most of it today. So we'll stop there, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam.